The Trump administration took aim at Russia today with new sanctions against some of its most powerful people. It is the latest in a series of increasingly tough measures meant to punish Russia for its involvement in Syria and Crimea and for trying to influence the U.S. election. The measures target 7 oligarchs with close ties to President Vladimir Putin and a dozen companies they own or control. They also affect 17 high-level officials at the Kremlin and a government agency in charge of selling Russian-made weapons. Well, let's get the perspective from Moscow now, and that's where our reporter Chris Brown is based. And Chris, the West has hit Russia with sanctions since 2014. How significant are these?
They're pretty significant, but also slightly different as well. The first few rounds of sanctions tended to focus mostly on people inside Russia's government, in the Kremlin, the Justice Ministry, also certain sectors such as the oil sector. This broadens that circle fairly dramatically, really going after the people who control, who run Russia's economy, the tycoons, as it were. The point is that there's a lot of money that goes back and forth between the Kremlin and this very small elite, and they're trying to disrupt that. Take the case of one of them, Oleg Deripaska. He's worth $6 billion according to Forbes. He's known as Russia's aluminum king. Today, the U.S. Treasury Department also said he's a pretty shady character, responsible for things such as extortion, racketeering, investigated for money laundering. What this is going to mean is that any of his assets in any U.S. jurisdictions can now be seized, and any business that he does with any other company, well, the Americans can put sanctions on that company. So the point is to try to make him and his money as toxic as possible.
And what has the reaction been in Russia today?
Lots of reaction. On the one hand, the Kremlin is saying not really so much of a big deal. We've survived sanctions before, which is true. Russia's economy did bounce back after those sanctions brought in 2014. And maybe many ordinary Russians won't feel this because it's aimed at the elite. On the other hand, a lot of critics outside Russia are very happy. They think that this is the kind of thing that should have been done a long time ago, going after the class that essentially supports Vladimir Putin. There is a chance, though, it could all backfire. Already today, we've heard from the Kremlin that they're not going to simply abandon any of these companies that are under sanctions. They're going to extend credit. They're going to extend the money if they need it. And that, in effect, could end up bringing many of these sanctioned companies even closer to the Kremlin.
Chris Brown in Moscow tonight. Now, Chris mentioned one of the oligarchs being targeted by these new sanctions, Oleg Deripaska, Russia's so-called aluminum king. Here's a look at some of the others. Kirill Shamalov married Vladimir Putin's youngest daughter in 2013, quickly becoming one of Russia's richest men. At one point, he owned almost a quarter of a major petrochemicals firm. After that marriage reportedly ended, Putin is believed to have punished Shamalov financially, though he remains very wealthy. Suleiman Karamov controls Russia's largest gold producer. He is noted for both his philanthropy and his questionable dealings. Karamov remains under investigation in France on tax evasion charges, and that's Alexander Torshim. He may not be the wealthiest Russian on the list, but he reportedly has deep ties within the NRA. Torshim is believed to have tried to set up a meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin at an NRA convention in 2016.